She thought he was just the quiet man at the gate, a security guard who handed out coffee, shared smiles, and played music under the rain. But what she didn't know was that he was hiding a life worth millions. He walked among them like a nobody, until one night the truth came out in front of everyone. Was he pretending? Or was he protecting something deeper? Stay with us, because this story will change the way you see love, kindness, and the man standing quietly at the edge of your life. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Now let's jump into the story. It was just after sunrise, when Claire Bennett's black car rolled to a gentle stop in front of the tall office building in downtown Seattle. The sky was still gray, heavy with the kind of quiet that follows a night of rain. Puddles lined the sidewalks, reflecting the flickering street lamps in Sleepy City. Claire, dressed in a long beige coat and soft leather gloves, glanced at her tablet. Another full day. Meetings, presentations, decisions. The usual. She reached for the door handle but paused when something outside caught her eye. Just across the street by the building's side gate, a man in a simple gray uniform was kneeling beside someone. It was a boy, maybe 16 or 17, sitting on the damp ground, his arms wrapped tightly around a small backpack. He looked cold, tired, and worn. The man, tall, quiet, with short brown hair and kind eyes, was speaking softly, offering something from his lunch bag. A sandwich, it looked like. Then he unzipped his jacket and pulled out a thin, folded blanket. Without hesitation, he handed it to the boy, who looked up at him like he didn't quite believe it. Claire leaned forward, in her seat. She had passed this gate every weekday for almost 2 years, but she had never really noticed the man before. He was always just there, standing in the small booth, nodding politely at cars, checking passes, opening the gate. Nothing more. Nothing less, but now something about him caught her attention. He wasn't just doing a job, he was caring, and not because anyone told him to, not because he wanted to be seen. He didn't even notice her watching. "Thank you," the boy said quietly, clutching the blanket. "Stay safe," the man replied. "There's a shelter 2 blocks down on Ash Street. They'll help you." The boy nodded and got up slowly, walking away with the blanket over his shoulders. The man stood there for a moment, watching, then turned back toward his gatepost. Claire stepped out of the car, still watching. Her driver asked if she needed an umbrella, but she waved him off. Her heels clicked lightly on the pavement as she walked toward the building, but her eyes flicked back once more to the gate. He was already back inside the small booth, now holding a steaming cup of coffee. No one else had noticed. Cars kept passing. Employees hurried by with their phones in hand, eyes down. But Claire felt different, like she had just seen something rare, something private, like a gentle secret whispered between strangers. She walked through the glass doors and into the building's warm lobby, but her mind stayed outside. The next morning, Claire arrived 5 minutes earlier than usual. She told herself it was because of traffic. Maybe she wanted time to review a document, but deep down she knew that wasn't true. The man at the gate was there again, standing tall, hands folded in front of him, eyes scanning the sidewalk as her car approached. He looked up and gave a small nod. She nodded back almost without thinking. For the rest of the week, she kept arriving a few minutes earlier. Each day, she noticed something else. Once, he helped an older man find his way to a nearby clinic. Another time, he offered his umbrella to a woman whose groceries had spilled across the sidewalk in the rain. He never asked for thanks. Never expected anything in return. On Friday, Claire finally asked her assistant, "Do you know the name of the man who works the side gate?" Her assistant blinked. "The security guard? No idea. Want me to find out?" Claire hesitated. "No, that's all right." That weekend, she kept thinking about him. It was strange, really. She didn't know his last name, barely knew his first. She only knew how he carried himself, with quiet grace and gentle strength. How he noticed the people others didn't. How he gave without asking for attention. On Monday, she arrived even earlier. "Good morning, Miss Bennett," he said with a calm voice. "Good morning," she replied, then paused. "I never asked. What's your name?" "Noah," he said, smiling slightly. "Noah Dalton." "Nice to meet you, Noah." He nodded again. "You too." As she walked into the building that morning, she realized something strange. The air felt lighter, the hallway seemed warmer, and for the first time in a long time, Claire Bennett smiled to herself for no reason at all. Over the next week, they spoke a little more each morning. Small things: weather, traffic, her coffee preferences, his favorite books. She started to bring him coffee one morning, just a regular black with a touch of sugar, and he accepted it with quiet thanks. Something was beginning, though Claire couldn't quite name it yet. But she knew this much. There was something special about the quiet man at the gate, and she was no longer just walking past. She was paying attention. Claire began looking forward to the mornings in a way she hadn't in years, not because of the meetings or the emails that would pile up by 9, but because of the 5 minutes she now shared with Noah Dalton before the day officially began. Each morning she brought 2 coffees, one for herself, usually a vanilla latte, and one plain black for him just the way he liked it. At first, Noah seemed surprised, maybe even a little unsure, but after the 3rd day, he began waiting with a quiet smile and a thank you that felt more sincere than any boardroom handshake. They stood together by the gate, talking about small things. Claire mentioned the long hours, the pressure of her position, the feeling that she was always expected to have the answers. Noah listened, never interrupting. When he did speak, his words were soft and thoughtful. He told her about the stray cat that slept behind the building's heater vents and how he brought it leftover chicken when he could. He mentioned volunteering on weekends at a small community center, helping elderly neighbors with grocery runs or reading to children who had no one else. "You do a lot of good," Claire said one morning as they watched the rain fall. Noah shrugged, gently. "I just try to pay attention. People pass each other all the time without really seeing. Sometimes the smallest kindness makes the biggest difference." Claire didn't know what to say to that. She had spent most of her adult life in a world that measured value in profit margins, efficiency, and time. But Noah measured differently. He noticed things others ignored. One morning, as she approached the gate, she saw him sitting on a low, concrete wall, tuning a small wooden instrument. "Is that a guitar?" she asked, handing him his usual coffee. "A ukulele," he replied, smiling. "Used to play in the park when I had more free time." "Are you any good?" "Not terrible," he said with a chuckle. "I don't play for others, just myself. Music helps me slow down." She sat beside him for a moment, even though her phone buzzed with calendar reminders. He played a few quiet notes, and for some reason, it made her eyes sting. "You're full of surprises," she said softly. He looked at her, his expression calm. "So are you." That simple line stayed with Claire all day. One Thursday morning, the sky was still dark when Claire stepped out of her car. She was rushing, late for a call. As she crossed the wet sidewalk, her heel caught a crack in the pavement. There was a loud snap, and she stumbled forward. Before she could fall, Noah was at her side, steadying her with one hand under her elbow. "Are you all right?" he asked, looking concerned. "Fine," she said, brushing herself off. "Just embarrassed and slightly annoyed at these ridiculous shoes." He looked down and grinned. "Seattle's not made for heels like that." "Clearly," she replied, laughing. He offered her his arm as she limped toward the front door. "Thank you," she said genuinely. "You help me start my day with coffee." "It's only fair I help you stay on your feet," he replied. They both smiled. As the weeks went on, Claire realized something had changed. She didn't just enjoy talking to Noah. She needed it. In those brief morning conversations, she found honesty, warmth, and a kind of peace she never expected from a stranger in a gray uniform. One morning, as they shared coffee, she asked the question that had been on her mind for a while. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course," he said. "You're kind, smart, thoughtful. Why security work? You could be doing so much more." He paused, watching a flock of birds scatter from the power line. I like seeing people, he said finally. Not just watching, but really seeing. When you work a job like this, you become invisible. People ignore you, but it lets you see who they really are. He turned back to her, his voice steady. Some people rush past, others smile. Some give their change to someone. On the street, some look away. I learn a lot from just being still. Claire felt quiet inside. His answer was not what she expected. It wasn't about ambition or money or career goals. It was about presence. You're not what I thought at all, she admitted. Neither are you, he replied. And somehow, that made them both smile by the time Claire entered the building. That day she wasn't thinking about reports or stock prices. She was thinking about the man at the gate, the one who played music for himself and offered kindness without reward. She knew something had begun between them. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was something softer, something honest. It was two people seeing each other clearly in a world full of people who didn't look at all. And Claire Bennett, the woman who once built walls to survive in a world of power and expectations, now found herself walking through a new kind of door, one that opened quietly, one that led somewhere she hadn't yet seen. The first warm day of spring arrived like a quiet gift. The city felt lighter, as if it had finally shaken off the weight of winter. Soft sunlight stretched across the streets and tiny green leaves peeked from the trees lining the sidewalk. Claire stood by her office window, holding her coffee and watching people pass below. It was one of those mornings that made everything feel new. She glanced at her desk. A stack of papers waited for her signature and emails buzzed in every few minutes, but her eyes kept drifting toward the small yellow invitation on the corner of her desk. It was for the annual garden party hosted by her company's community outreach fund. It was the one event each year where Claire actually felt proud, not for profits, but for purpose. The party raised money to support local youth programs and mental health services. For as long as she could remember, Claire had always attended the event alone. She had learned to carry herself with grace, to walk into any room without needing someone beside her. But this year, something felt different. As she stepped out of the building that afternoon, she saw Noah at his usual post by the gate. The sun touched his face, and for the first time she noticed a small freckle beneath his left eye. He looked up and smiled. "Good afternoon, Claire." She smiled back. "You ever take a break?" "I like being here," he said simply. "The gate keeps the day steady." They stood in silence for a moment, then, before she could second-guess herself, Claire reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small note. She had written it on a yellow sticky paper that morning and folded it twice. "I have something for you," she said, handing it to him. He looked surprised, but took it gently. Opening it, his eyes moved over the short line. "Would you like to come with me to the garden party this Saturday?" "Claire," he looked up at her a bit stunned. "As your guest?" She nodded, trying to sound casual. "Unless you're too busy protecting the sidewalk." His laugh was soft but warm. "I'd be honored." "Great," she said, a little breathless. "It's at 5. I'll text you the address." As she walked away, her heart beat faster than usual. She wasn't sure what she had just invited, something new, something unknown. But it felt right. Saturday arrived with the scent of blooming flowers and fresh-cut grass. Claire stood near the entrance to the garden venue, her fingers gently twisting the edge of her bracelet. Around her, guests mingled beneath strings of lights and trees wrapped in soft fabric. Soft jazz music played, and glasses clinked as laughter floated through the air. Then she saw him. Noah walked in wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit and polished shoes. His hair was neatly styled, and he carried himself with the same quiet calm she had always seen. But tonight, there was something else. Something sharp, confident even. Elegant. He walked toward her, his eyes meeting hers. "You clean up well," she said with a smile. "So do you," he replied. "Though I've never seen you not put together." They laughed, and she linked, her arm through his as they stepped into the crowd. Throughout the evening, Claire noticed something unexpected. Noah moved through the room with ease, speaking to guests with natural grace. He complimented the musicians on their sound, asked thoughtful questions to a city council member about public housing, and even made the chairman of the board laugh. Something Claire had never managed. He didn't seem out of place at all. In fact, he seemed like he belonged. "You ever think about working in public relations?" she joked. "Not my style," he said, sipping his sparkling water. "But I like listening. That helps." As the evening reached its peak, the event's host took the stage and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. It's because of your generosity that we continue our mission. And tonight, we're honored to announce a very special donation. An anonymous gift of $1 million has been made to support our youth and mental health programs." Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Claire's eyes widened. "We'd like to thank our anonymous donor, who has kindly agreed to step forward tonight. Please welcome Mr. Noah Dalton." Claire froze. Applause filled the garden as Noah slowly made his way to the small platform. He stood tall, his hands calm at his sides, and looked out at the crowd. "Most of you don't know me," he began. "Some of you may recognize me from outside this very building. I've worked at the gate for some time now. What many don't know is that before that, I started a company that was later sold for far more than I ever expected. I could have stayed in that world, but I wanted to step away, to live simply, to give quietly, and to understand what it really means to see and be seen." He paused, then glanced at Claire. "I made this donation because I believe in what this foundation does. I believe in giving without needing to be noticed. But tonight I also believe in being honest." The crowd cheered, some people whispering in awe. Claire stood still, heart pounding. Nothing about this night had gone the way she expected. And yet, everything felt right. As Noah stepped down from the stage, their eyes met again. She didn't say a word, but she didn't need to. After the applause faded and the music returned, Claire stepped away from the crowd. She needed air, needed space to breathe. The garden lights blurred slightly as her thoughts raced. Nothing about Noah made sense anymore. The quiet man at the gate had just stood in front of 100 people and revealed a truth that changed everything. She walked along the edge of the garden, her heels crunching softly on the gravel path. The flowers were in bloom, and the evening breeze was cool against her skin. It should have been peaceful, but her heart was not still. Then she heard footsteps behind her. "Claire." Noah's voice came, gentle but unsure. She turned to face him. He looked the same as always, but now she saw layers she hadn't noticed before. Strength beneath calm, confidence beneath quiet, honesty beneath mystery. "You're a millionaire," she said softly, trying to smile. "Or billionaire?" He gave a small shrug. "Closer to the second." Claire nodded slowly, searching his face. "Why didn't you tell me?" He stepped closer, keeping his hands in his pockets. "Because I didn't want you to see all this first. The money, the name. I wanted you to know me. The man who listens. The one who brings coffee. The one who sees people for who they are." She looked down at the ground. "So, the stories about helping the cat and the shelter kids and the ukulele, all true?" "Every one of them," he said. "None of that changes." She looked up again. "But you hid who you really are." "I didn't lie," he said. "I just chose to start from the inside out. I wanted to build something real, not something built on what I have." Claire didn't answer right away. The garden lights shimmered around them, casting soft shadows across the path. In her world, people always led with what they owned. Titles, resumes, awards. Noah had done the opposite. "You made me question everything," she said finally. "I know," he replied. "And if that means you walk away now, I'll understand." She took a breath. "I don't want to walk away. I just need to understand what this means." Noah nodded. "It means nothing has to change, unless you want it to. I'm still the man who waits by the gate, still the one who looks forward to our morning talks more than anything else in my day. I just happen to have a past I don't lead with." They stood in silence. The music from the party played in the distance, but it felt far away now. I fell for someone, Claire said slowly, who played music in the rain and gave sandwiches to strangers. Someone who made me feel seen in a way no one else ever has. Then you fell for me, Noah said. Not the money. She looked at him, her eyes soft. I think I did. A small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. He offered his hand. Come back to the party with me? He asked. In a minute, she said. Let's stay here just a little longer. They sat down on a bench beneath a tree. No words for a while. Just quiet. Just peace. The weeks that followed were gentle, like the early days of spring. People talked, of course. The office buzzed with surprise. Some whispered, others stared, but Claire didn't mind. She walked beside Noah, proud and steady, just as she had at the party. He never changed how he treated anyone, and she admired that even more now. Eventually, Noah accepted a new role, not in the spotlight, but behind the scenes. He became a key advisor to the foundation, helping expand programs for youth and families in need. Claire and Noah worked together most days, but their favorite time was still the morning, still those quiet 5 minutes before the building woke up. One afternoon, they sat in the courtyard, sipping coffee like they always had. Claire leaned back and smiled. Funny how it all began, she said. Just a cup of coffee and a man by a gate. And a woman who noticed, he added. They both laughed softly. Months later, the booth at the gate stood empty, not because it was no longer needed, but because Noah's place in the world had shifted. Still, every now and then, he'd stop by in the morning to wave at the new guard and offer him coffee. They married in a small ceremony under a row of oak trees near the community center Noah once volunteered at. No photographers, no headlines, just a quiet group of people, shelter kids, neighbors, and old friends who had known Noah and Claire before titles ever mattered. As the sun set that day, Claire stood beside him, her hand in his, watching the light fade behind the hills. The world felt softer somehow, quieter, more honest. Their story became something whispered between strangers. A reminder that sometimes the richest people are the ones who give in silence. And sometimes love grows not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in the small unnoticed places where kindness lives. And in the end, Claire didn't fall for the money. She fell for the man who opened the gate, and without trying, opened her heart.